I guess we're finally recording and everything. Fantastic. Welcome to BSides. Thank you for coming down, down the hallway, underneath the stairs, down the dark hallway, and finally turning left into this room. Appreciate you guys coming here. My name is Cybernetics Tony. Also known as a Cube Wombat. That's my Twitter handle, and that's my blog. If you want to read a bunch of cool articles. So here to talk about you want to be a cyber threat analyst, huh? Well, first off, this is the disclaimer that I must have. This is not a presentation. It's all based on my opinion. It doesn't have anything to do with the people I used to work for, may work for in the future, currently work for, anybody else. I'm a big giant dumb head and don't know what I'm talking about. Hence, you have this cute, adorable picture on the left-hand screen. Just to keep everyone up and awake, we're just going to have, instead of doing cat memes, I did pictures of my kiddos because she's a lot cuter sometimes than cat pictures. This presentation provides key theories and concepts required to be an actual cyber threat analyst. This is my opinion, but this is really what the core is. If you look back at a lot of the briefs and videos about cyber threat analysis that's out there, you're going to come across some of these very similar things, right? So if you're a brand spanking new to being a cyber threat analyst and you want to break into the field, thanks for coming, and I hope this kind of helps out. If you are a cyber threat analyst, been doing this for a while, hopefully this is my lessons learned. Some of the stuff you won't find in other people's briefs is just my personal opinions on making our lives easier, what made my life easier throughout the well over 8 years of doing it. When I first broke in, the very first thing I did, I started asking questions like, okay, cool, you're going to be a cyber threat analyst. It's like, all right, cool. What is that? They're like, don't worry about it. Just sit down in this chair right here and open up your browser. Yeah, this is Linux. This is awesome. I'm like, all right, cool. This is Linux. This is great. And they're like, hey, so this is Wireshark. And they're like, this is the folder where all the PCAPs are. Deuces. I'm like, well, okay, cool. Start looking around. I'm like, what the hell is this? He's like, yeah, I was wondering that too. That's a weird protocol, man. I don't know what the hell that is. Should figure it out though. See ya. What the? First day on the job, right? I saw another guy I knew pass by, and I was like, hey, dude, you're really smart. Like, what the crap is this? He's like, oh, yeah, that looks really weird. That doesn't look good at all. Should figure out what that is. Like, well, how do I do that? They're like, Google. Like, all right, cool, man. That's awesome. And that's kind of how it is sometimes as a cyber threat analyst, honestly. But the good news was that I actually had a lot of mentors. I really did. And I got really lucky in who I got to learn from. There were these things called theories out there. You had the Lockheed Martin kill chain at that point. You had the EC Council phases of attacks, so people would actually talk about attacks. And what was really awesome is I got to learn about from kind of like second tier down from one of the guys who wrote the Diamond Model of Intrusion Analysis. So I got to learn about that before it was even published out on the outside. So I got really, really blessed and lucky. It was really interesting though, is at that time, they were still working a lot of this stuff out too. And since then there's been a lot of changes in the cyber threat analysis. A lot of these theories have actually been worked out and kind of massaged out. But looking back 8 years later, for a new analyst, that's kind of what it is. It's like, oh yeah, this is Wireshark, and yeah, look at that snort head over there. Have fun. Hence this presentation. So if I had to do it again, this is what I wish someone would have sat down and talked to me about. So listen, figure out your environment. Not like a security sense. Screw that security stuff. You'll figure it out as you move along. Figure out what your environment is. Communicate and organize yourself like a business. Screw that other intelligence, higher up, whatever. Think about it like a business. You're producing things. Pick a risk analysis model and stick with it. Choose your own attack phases. It does not matter which attack phase you adhere to. Just the fact that you understand how that works, now you can incorporate it. Mitigation and understanding. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, I have a snort software for it. No. Why are you pushing that mitigation? What does that actually do for you as an organization? And how do you actually communicate that up? Is all important things to keep in mind. If you only remember one thing from this talk, if your brand's making new, I hope that you will be Googling as you walk out the Diamond Model of Intrusion Analysis. Please, the Diamond Model of Intrusion Analysis. If you don't know what that is, that's okay, and even if you've been doing it for a long time, still don't know what it is, it's okay. It's just going to be, it's so useful, It's like doing math with a hand, on pieces of paper, if you will, and suddenly realizing there's a calculator out there. If that makes any difference. The pyramid page, we're going to talk about that and how it actually relates to cyber threat analysis. And if we have time, We're going to talk about trying to avoid being Alice in Wonderland, running down weird rabbit holes as much as humanly possible. Some tips that have worked for me may not work for you, but it's worked for me in the past when I've managed a lot of other cyber threat analysis, or analysts, I should say. How to support a SOC and play matchmaker with that security team. And finally, our more recommended courses, certifications, reading, and hopefully a means to actually break into the industry. So cyber threat, what? This is the problem right now. There's no, in this infancy that we are in right now. It's 8 years, but no one really has a good solid grasp of what cyber threat analysis is. They'll say, hey, my analyst is going to do, analysis. They'll sometimes work as a second tier backing up a SOC. Sometimes you'll do intelligence work. Sometimes you won't do any of that in any way, shape, or form. Sometimes you'll work for a CTO. Sometimes you'll just be sitting there, hating yourself, writing snort signatures all day long. But it's because the industry itself hasn't defined it yet. But that's okay. Because these things, these concepts, they're going to be applicable to whatever kind of job you actually run into. I blame it kind of on the fact that there's not a whole lot of formal training out there, and the training pipelines aren't really there yet. CompTIA just released their CSA. That might be promising. I don't know. I'm not hip to the CompTIA to that CSA plus, but it holds a lot of promises. It's in between CASP and Security Plus, which is kind of where, in a lot of respects, you are, right? You're still not very technical, but you still have to explain things to a manager who might have that CASP. There's SANS 4578. It's written because guys actually were tired of there not being a certification for cyber threat analysis. However, honestly, I don't have $5,000. If you do, that's awesome. Except that's a lot of money to get and break into this field. It really is. McAfee has these two certifications, CCII and CCIP, that are brand spanking new as well. When I was looking through a lot of the details on them, they're all law enforcement based, which is fine if you do law enforcement, but in my humble opinion of 8 years of doing this, I can't think of a single time where I actually had to deal with a bunch of crazy law enforcement forensic rules. That's why we have forensics people. But still, it's a good thing, and it's a good thing to formalize the training. University courses, I've looked into this. I haven't found a really good university course that actually talks about this. So in other words, and honestly, I've gotten more people with master's degrees that I go to interview, and I can't hire them. Can't hire them. Even if they've had super duper master's degrees or what have you, all kinds of years, if they don't have the experience, and honestly, when I have hired people who've had master's degrees for God's sakes, master's degrees, I sit in front of a computer and I have to have the exact same conversations I have to have with a brand spanking new person with 1 year. Advanced stuff like myself, they're like, yeah, just become a reverse engineer. It's not the same, so there's not really anything above that. The literature is kind of sparse. They can be broken down into basically 3 different styles. One is the cyber warfare model. Those are the guys who usually come out in the DoD, if you will, talk about warfare. Then you have the folks who actually talk about intelligence and have a very intelligent way of doing things. You do have the information assurance. If you're like me, you start reading information assurance, you just kind of like NIST, what a STIG, what is and sometimes you'll find hits and pieces in some of the books that are out there. For instance, if you look at the Alien Autopsy book, if you're thinking about reverse engineering, grab the Alien Autopsy book. If you don't know what I'm talking about, just Google malware analysis and look for something that looks like an alien autopsy. They have 1 chapter in there, and it's okay if you get your start. If you've never done infrastructure analysis, that's okay. It'll kind of get you a bit started. If you've never done malware searching, it'll kind of get you started. But it's 1 chapter in 1 book, so it's really sparse. But we're growing in demand. All right. According to the Information Bureau of Labor and Statistics, we're 18% growth. That's 10% more than the average across the board. That is 6 points above IT in general. And the median income is $90K. That's across the world. If you get $90K for doing this job in here, ask for a raise. You gotta live, man. So I'm just saying, it doesn't require a degree to be effective. I'm living proof of that. There's hope out there, though. And what's really awesome is there's these tools, and sometimes they help. They honestly do. They really do help. And they look pretty. And management loves pew-pew maps. Pew, pew, pew. Oh, look at that, the missiles hitting. That's a cyber attack hitting the world. It's awesome. But they buy them for us, which is different than a lot of IT people. A lot of some IT people are hurting to get an upgraded Cisco switch. Like, it's a Cisco Pix, man. This has been outdated for years. Just pay for that. But they're buying $1 million tools for us. Yay. So cyber threat analysis and the intelligence that we're producing isn't going away, and it's becoming more and more valuable. Opportunities exist to further the field. Remember, there's not a whole lot out there, which means if you come into this field and you start doing great things and you find out a way forward, there you go, man. You could be Isaac Newton. You can have those theories, those laws, those things that actually work and function, and everyone will follow it because CTAs are generally extremely helpful. We kind of have to be, right? We love to share. One of the guys that I know, we like to call him Cyber Jesus because he just knows way too many people. If you're in the community, you kind of might know who that is. Are by nature curious, and he said it's kind of like being a doctor in the early 1900s. It's kind of where we're at, where you go and learn something, and then you kind of have to leave that place and go somewhere else to learn something new. And then you seem like a rock star for 5 seconds, but like, no, like this is this other guy's work. He just told me how to do and chain PE hashes or something like that. It's real easy. And more important than anything, there's actually several key theories out there, and what's the best thing in the world, I'm a former enlisted guy, so I love things that actually work, because they do, which is why we use them. All right, so there's a lot of definitions out there. Again, industry's not just for this talk. All right, we're going to say a cyber threat analyst is someone who gathers data and information, compares it against the known knowns of an organization or entity to provide situational awareness of any given threat. Situational awareness, sometimes known as intelligence, or specifically, we can call it, let's just say, cyber threat analysis, or cyber threat intelligence, all right? And my honest opinion on this, and I've seen a lot of people fight over this kind of stuff, is keep it simple. Keep it as simple as possible. Don't overthink it. So first step, who the heck are you? All right, this is the Porter's 5 forces model. It's actually originally done for business. It's for determining profitability of the company. But if you keep a positive outlook, this is actually really, really great. Apply it to yourself. Think about it for a couple of minutes. Who actually is getting your stuff? Who are your buyers? Who's consuming what you're putting out? Who are the guys over in the SOC who are kind of doing a very similar mission to you? Who are the new entrants that are just popping up all over the dang place? Did someone just tell your CTO that they have a magical solution that if you just plug in this AI awesomeness, you can replace all these 5 or 6 intelligence body or analysts over here? Sometimes that stuff happens. You have to know who's actually supplying you with data. Apply it to yourself, and then apply it to your organization or entity. Okay? Find out what's important to your organization, to your business. All right? So why am I doing that? I'm just a worker bee. Business models. Why am I doing that, right? Well, knowing who your suppliers are will ensure you keep those data feeds, honestly. So if you don't actually control the Windows logs or whatever, you need to know who to talk to, is the honest to God's truth. No matter if you're a manager or not. Knowing who also has very similar missions keeps you in good swim lanes and keeps misunderstandings from actually happening. They're going to also save you a lot of work, because if they're pulling PCAP for you, why are you pulling PCAP, man? That's not, they're doing it. It was also really important to recognize as an organization is, listen, your organization is probably connecting to a lot of other companies, no matter what it is. It doesn't matter if you're DoD or the IC, or you're actually working for a customer or for a government, if you will, or for a commercial sector. Listen, you're going to have a supply chain involved. You kind of need to know who that is, because you should probably be sharing your threat intelligence with them. Honest to God, truth is, you might actually be the target, even though they hit, if you make pop, let's say you work for an ice cream company, and you produce those little awesome rocket pops, right, that turn your lips all blue, right, and red and everything like that. And you hear about the person who actually makes the little sticks, and the person who made the sticks got hacked by a cyber attack. That's not your company, right? No, I don't need it. Yeah, you do, because the real target actually could have been you. You should be actually sharing your threat intelligence with that person, because you rely on that person. That's just kind of how it goes. And perhaps, yeah, that's it. Sorry, sidetrack. All right, so communicating work like a business. All right, a lot of people are kind of fumbling over this in the area, right? They talk about intelligence. They're trying to apply intelligence models to this. My suggestion is to organize like a business. Why? Because you're producing something. Business models have been around for a very, very long time, okay? They know what they're doing. So organize yourself like a business, okay? Your inbound logistics, those are all the data feeds you're actually looking at, whether it's external or internal, right? How are you actually getting those? How are you actually evaluating those? Those are all the inbound logistics side of the house. Operations, that's you doing the grunt work, the grunt that everyone gets excited about, if you're me, if you will, of looking into something, of going down those rabbit holes. But guess what? On the equal playing field is your outbound logistics. How are you actually communicating that out? Do you have a method of doing that? What's your process of doing that? It's actually really super crazy important. It really is. Then you have your marketing and sales. Are you actually communicating your information, the way you put it out, with somebody who can actually understand it? Services is all those questions you get from management, and the ways you incorporate those in. Honestly, if your service model is, boss tells other boss, and then it slowly trickles down, and your boss watched something on CNN, and suddenly they're worried about a threat, that's not a good, that needs to be cleaned up, right? So, identifying it like this, breaking it apart, and making it an equal playing field with all those data threat feeds you want to get on externally and internally is important. Trust me. Treat them all equally. Maybe you'll actually spend more money on that pew-pew map because you know it's actually going to give you more funding next year. Or maybe that's actually how your CTO really wants to see everything. He does want to see, he or she wants to see those little missiles coming from Russia and hitting you every day. Fine. He's paying the paycheck. That's okay. It also graphically depicts all of our required processes, so when you actually go to tell somebody, hey, the real reason why I need viral intelligence is because you just bought all these incoming data feeds, and that's great and all, but see this other section called operations? That's my virus total. I don't have anything at all going into to support this operations side of the house. I need a tool for this, and that tool is giving me viral intelligence or domain tools or any number of other things that you can actually get for it, okay? And talking to your leaders like that, saying, listen, the reason why I need this data feed, I need this data feed because this is our suppliers and this is why this is important. You start talking about suppliers, start talking to them on how that's your inbound logistics. Now you're talking usually in that whole business realm, right? Most of the people who are above us have a business degree. It enables you to actually talk and for them to actually understand what the crap you're saying. So there's a lot of risk analysis models out there. There's huge books and volumes. You can go nuts with it. I know in the program we had ORM. I was like, all right, yeah, I'll just do ORM. That's going to be really easy. And I looked into it, and I was like, oh my god, this is so complicated. So I used ORM all the time when I was in a former life. But when I started thinking about it, I don't do it. I actually use this little risk rating that I have here, which is the likelihood of us actually detecting it, the requirements to actually impact somebody, and the potential that my organization is actually vulnerable. It's very, very, very simple. You can do this, you can choose your own. It doesn't matter, because the reality of the situation is you should be talking about a phishing email campaign or the next, Russian this or Chinese that. If you're not actually providing that quantitative, you can show how you got there, that risk, with all those potential steps to minimize, when you push that information up, pure confusion happens. Pure traditional FUD. They're not going to understand what the heck you're saying. So, think about it. If your sole job is actually trying to provide information for the people to actually do changes, right, to patch their system, to buy that new threat feed or update finally that Cisco PIX, you need to be able to tell them why. And that's where you get into risk. That's where you actually talk about the steps to mitigate. Choose your own attack description. It doesn't matter. And it's not a one-for-one if you're familiar with these concepts. What you need to know about this as a cyber threat analyst is really that this is your map in relative time of where data and information could be actually obtained and evaluated. Sounds kind of cosmic, right? Let me put it to you like this. You're not going to find weaponization. That's what we're talking about virus load, right? If you see that your average hacker is actually implementing and submitting stuff over into virus load or something similar to it, then yeah, you should probably be looking in that pot, because that's going to save you when it comes down to weaponization, because that person's building something for you, right? The delivery side. The reality is you're not going to look into a firewall log for command control communication, not exactly, really, right? It may be 5 seconds of space there. It might just show up as just a connection. You actually really need that full PCAP to be able to find out what is actually going on. So it's just a way to kind of parse things out, if you will. So if you want to learn more about Lockheed Martin Kill Chain and EC Council, you can go and get your CEH. They'll have all kinds of information on EC Council. Lockheed Martin Kill Chain, it's free. You can go and download it right. It's probably about time you actually get out of here.
If I can ask, I have a hard time just keeping up with my regular Twitter feed. How are you sucking in all this data and really getting it? Because there's just too much is going on worldwide when it comes to cyber. I mean, are you and your team like saying, I'll take these APTs, I'll take these APTs, and you take those APTs? I mean, how are you divvying up that workload so that it's not too overwhelming?
So honestly, my thoughts on that, and one, that's incoming logistics for everyone who's keeping track. Honestly, we look at it and we don't care about if it's Russian or Chinese or whatever it is. That's not C&D focused, right?
Yeah.
I can't be like, oh, well, the Chinese are hitting us, we should care. Oh, the Russians we don't care about them. So when I start prioritizing, I really do look at the risk, okay? I would look at what is actually occurring. If a new piece of malware comes out and I have mitigations already in place that I know will stop that, then no, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time reading that report. And for a lot of things can actually be automated, right? Data keeps coming in, so on and so forth. Does that help answer your question a little bit?
No. I mean, even as an Intel guy in the Army, I just had too much Intel to review.
That's right.
And you didn't know what was really going to affect you until sometimes it was too late.
No, I understand. I'll talk about it afterwards. I just want to let me get through this, and then we can probably talk offline. All right. Diamond model of intrusion analysis. Listen, this is actually the foundation of doing cyber threat analysis. If you've never heard of this, that's okay. Chances are this actually applies to what you were doing anyway. A lot of times, if you see an actual phishing email and you see a domain or what have you, what are you going to do? You're going to look it up. But why are you looking it up? What are you trying to get from there? And chances are you're trying to find probably whatever piece of malware is associated with it. And the diamond model actually forms it up into a nice, wonderful little diamond. I didn't want to put it on here just because I'm weird. But you're looking actually for the capability, right? It breaks it down, all right? And if you think about it, back on our previous slide, right? You have your chronos, you have your weaponization, you have all these little phases of a regular little attack. But the reality of it is every single one of these phases actually has a little diamond. You're always going to have an attacker. You're always going to have the infrastructure they're using. You're always going to have the capability, the infrastructure they're using as well as the capability. It's malware or what have you, right? You're always going to have a victim. And it might change at every single phase of that diamond. Right? So it does get more complicated as we go along. What's really great about the diamond model, though, is it helps you put into focus all those different phases, right? And it puts yourself into focus. I'm looking for infrastructure and capability, or I'm looking for a capability that was used once they're actually inside the network, right? Once they're actually doing command and control. It helps you organize those different phases of attack into something that's a little tiny, itty bitty. And it also lets you expand out. So if you find that they use a particular piece of malware, once they actually get inside of a Windows environment, right? You can expand that out, and you can actually see other victims that actually saw from the exact same attack. You can see the infrastructure they're using in your attack, as well as the old infrastructure they're using in the other ones. You can actually try and get more of that infrastructure. That's how we get down the rabbit holes, when we actually start digging into those kinds of things. But it keeps you sane. Because the moment you go from researching infrastructure on one tiny phase of attack to jumping all over the place into the capabilities and the malwares and all that kind of stuff, you're going to lose focus of what you were looking for in the very beginning. So that's my I covered it a little later, but that's actually one of the biggest key takeaways with the diamond model, is it keeps you sane, it keeps you doing everything the right way. It also blends itself really, really well with other concepts. If you have not read the full write-up on the diamond model intrusion analysis, it's completely free. You can download it. If you really want to ask questions, I know he's probably going to hate me, he probably doesn't even know I'm actually briefing, but you can actually reach out to some of the people who actually wrote this on Twitter. And I know the guy, I'm not sure if he remembers me at all, but he's a really, really nice guy, and he actually answered a bunch of questions when I was just a small, dumb junior analyst. All right, so mitigation and defense in depth. So, defense in depth is made up of 3 different things. Your people, your technology, and operations. Operations meaning the processes you're actually doing. Technology being, your technology, and the actual people. And they say, hey, this is an industry standard best practice. You should actually have your mitigations coming through to the defense in depth. So what does that actually mean to us, right? It means that you actually have to, when you're reporting information out, you can't just say, oh, well, I have a source signature, it's fine. That's not enough. That's not fair. You actually have to talk about the people, the technology, and the operations. And you have to provide mitigations for all of those things. Luckily, there are models out there that kind of help you organize your thoughts, right? One of those is actually the Lockheed Martin cyber threat matrix. That actually has the 5 Ds of really what to do. But the reality is you can always, let's take the most common phishing vulnerability out there, right? CVE 2012-0158. There's a Metasploit module in there, right? So anybody and their mother can actually build it. There's videos on how to actually build a phishing email using CVE 2002 or 2012-0158, right? But it relies on ActiveX actually running on your Windows machine. So in other words, the guy gets an actual phishing email, gets the little ActiveX warning, the guy clicks on it, and boom, he's hosed, right? Well, that warning is set by policy, right? You can have you could actually have different policies where you can actually strip out attachments out of your email. Yes, that is the same as just unplugging from the internet, but you have to be able to talk to people and say, listen, we can actually stop this at all these different phases of an attack. We can stop this with technology. We can actually stop this by policy that actually implements and affects the operations, right? But overall, what about the people, right? That's a whole nother, how do you actually mitigate the people? And we can have malware or malicious, some files that actually strip attachments and look at the actual attachments, see if there's actually malware involved. That's going to be your technology. But how do you actually get to the people? Which brings us to this. So the pyramid of pain. If you've never heard of it, it shows the relationship between the types of indicators you might use and basically how you're actually going to affect the adversary. But you know what's really funny that people don't talk about all that much? It's a double-edged sword. Meaning, I can throw in something to stop hash values. I can block IP addresses and domain names all day long. Network and host-based artifacts, there are tools out there which help you, right? The actual tools that they're using, the customized tools, whether it be generic or not. You can build rules for those, right? But the very top is TTP. And guess who's at the TTP? People, right? Those people. So yes, it's tough on the adversary when you get to change those TTPs. But tell me a good way to stop someone from clicking on that link sent to them in a phishing email. That's a really hard thing to do, right? So it's a double-edged sword. And you need to understand that as you're presenting all of your other mitigations, okay? And honestly, if you ever want to see any of the indicators of compromise, you hear that term, you will hear that term if you're a cyber threat analyst thrown out everywhere. The vast majority of those will really be sometimes talking about the tools. Most of those are actually going to be your network and host-based artifacts. And, we love us chucking around some domain names and IP addresses. That gets chucked around like crazy. So if you ever hear the term IOC, this is what they're actually talking about. Okay? And this is actually, honestly, how you should evaluate it. and maybe perhaps how you should weight getting those data feeds of all that information. All right, so dance break to summarize. All right, so CTAs evaluate data and information from cyber intrusions, aka activity chains. All right, that's multiple attacks going on, with a focus on those chains with a similar or could impact their organization. The attacks can be broken down into their phases, which is really great. Each phase has at least one diamond model composed of 4 constants: an actor, a victim, an infrastructure, or the capability that we're running. In CTAs, well, they know their environment, relatively speaking, honestly. And current mitigations. Armed with that knowledge, we can actually provide situational awareness and intelligence. That situational awareness and intelligence, if you will, should all be based off of a quantitative risk to try and lower the actual threat to an organization. Those mitigations should be holistic. They should encompass those wonderful people, technology, and operations. And if you really want to, my humble opinion, and something that might be really useful to you, is to break them down even further into network, what you do actually for host space, what you can do for organizational policy, break them into O&M, O&M meaning someone actually patching their system, but it could also mean the actual security that you're running against it to actually harden it in the first place. And lastly, of course, training and awareness to your users to hit that top tier of the pyramid of pain. And also, always keep in mind that the fact that you look at that pyramid of pain and know for a fact that a lot of these will be either bypassed or bypassed at a certain level. Whether it's going to be really easy, like a hash file, or an IP address that can be bypassed, or if you're actually going to try and keep on pinging on that really hard to hit top tier, which is, of course, just a user clicking on a stupid link. And I think we definitely have time. Awesome. So now we're just going to cover the tips on collaboration, avoiding being Alice in Wonderland, SOC, and recommended courses. So tips on collaboration and pivoting. Honestly, set time limits. That whole operations piece, 4 hours, is my humble opinion. Don't go beyond that. If you're looking into one piece, one indicator, one piece of that diamond, and you're starting to grab information on that piece of malware, and you hit the 4-hour mark without finding anything new, stop. I've seen people go a week looking into one piece of malware. And they have the entire life story, but they got that entire life story in the first 8 hours. The rest of the time, they're just like looking into looking into secret blogs over in Russia somewhere. Like, this guy actually was talking about it. Just relax. Gone down the rabbit hole. So set time limits. Otherwise, we'll go bananas. No matter who talks about it, automation is no substitute for talking with your fellow analysts. All right? Yes, you did get that report in an automated fashion. Fantastic. But if you ever actually reached across and talked to the guy who submitted that report, half the time, especially in certain areas, you'll type up a report and it'll go out. You look at the report and go, that's missing a lot of context. So talking with the actual analyst who submitted that report will be able to tell you what's going on. Some of those guys are as easy as a phone call, or girls, I should say, or an email, sometimes even as a Twitter account connection, right? Sanity check your findings always. I've seen, again, there's a certain mutex that's always used for flash drives, for instance. When you see a flash drive malware, they'll say something like CTF50, blah, 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 onto it. I've seen guys go bananas, just talking about that. They're like, oh my goodness, I've got it all. The Indians are involved, and these ransomware guys are involved, and the Chinese are involved, and the Russians are involved, and the people in North, oh my God, it's all connected! No, not at all. That's not how that works. But sometimes it is really hard, even for me, when I'm looking through stuff, and you gotta have some kind of sanity check. Because you might miss a domino, honestly. What I mean is you're actually constantly building something related to something else. So if one of those dominoes falls or gets pulled, then all your theory just goes down the poop. So having someone come around and actually fact check it, sorry, is really important. Look into one indicator at a time, and one section of the model at a time. Always take lots of notes, which is just kind of, important. Always make sure you actually include your links. Because sometimes when you're chasing the rabbit, you'll go a week without ever, you're like, where did I find this connection? And you have to redo all your analysis. And ask questions, even the dumb ones, and you may actually be surprised. And of course, how to be a good matchmaker. So, despite the political climate, in the word fences, all right? So Robert Frost said it first, he said, good fences make good neighbors. And the reality is it does. But that poem is actually talking about two people coming together and talking about those fences. And that's the reality, man. Talk to your SOC analysts. Talk to the guys who are doing your data feeds. Talk to the people that are outside of that bubble that we already kind of defined earlier on. Talk to them. Find out how they can actually talk back and forth. Mend the wall, if you will, to make sure you're actually passing the right information. You still have your specific swim lanes, but you're able to talk back and forth. It's as simple as that. It really is. Well, I should say, it's as simple as saying it, and then as difficult as actually dealing with some, people, which could be really, really difficult. And with that, don't talk to management. Honestly, sometimes management is not your best friend. It always depends. It really does. I would rather talk to an analyst any day of the week over in another shop before actually talking to a middle manager, because you get fiefdoms being stood up really, really quickly, and you should be kind of worried of that. My suggestion, honestly, is talk to the worker bees who are just trying to do their job, who are usually the experts over there anyway. And find out, honestly, what actually helps them do their job. You have to remember, again, you're not only the only consumer, right? You're producing this intelligence, right? How are the people over the SOC actually using it? I remember very clearly someone going, hey, yeah, you keep on sending this over in CSV. You realize that's just a pain in the butt, man. I got to throw it in Excel and do all these things, and then, it's really annoying. Why do you keep sending it in CSV? And I was like, I thought you guys wanted it. You don't want that. Because we actually have it all broken down in Excel. We can convert it to CSV for you. They're like, that's stupid. Don't ever do that. Same thing with like the Stix taxi thing, right? Sometimes an actual Excel spreadsheet is so much better than I need to stand up a taxi server to automatically send this as humanly possible. Blah. Sometimes it's just useful if once a day you just shot me an email with your Excel spreadsheet on it. I'm a happy camper, honestly. And again, target those worker bees. Recommended reading. There's a lot of books out there. Listen, you can read into those ones that are warrior-focused. You can read into the ones that are intelligence-focused. You can read the ones, God help, honestly, if anyone in this room can read an RFC and a NIST publication, all that stuff, and just be like, this is amazing! You are amazing to me. Not me, all right? So after having all these other recommended books, I can't just tell you, hey, read this book, read this manual, and you're going to be there. So I'll suffice to say, listen, these are the things you kind of need to know. One that everybody knows, or everyone should know, which is the 10 Commandments of Intrusion Analysis. One of those is, don't trust a packet you didn't make yourself. Best. Honestly, the best piece of advice I've ever heard. Don't trust a packet you didn't build yourself. Because all CTAs are paranoid. It's a good thing. This is really important. I think this is one that not a lot of people actually know. This was submitted before the APT-1 report. Everyone always kind of points towards APT-1. They're like, oh my goodness, this is so great. But believe it or not, these guys are actually putting it out a little bit earlier. Not that much. It's actually the Crazy Aussies. This, man, if you've never read this paper, I highly encourage you to do it. It's Command and Control in the 5th domain. Seriously, read it. It was done, I think it was done actually in 2011. And honestly, I have yet to come across a write-up, period. Any write-up. This is 26 pages. You have blog posts that do this like, it's like 5 or 6 pages, and you're like, man, this is really in-depth. Oh my God, this is 26 pages. Pages of article that's like 2-sided. So there's like 4 columns there in little teeny tiny print. So you want to watch it on a laptop so you can actually zoom in if you're old like me. And of course, the one that kind of everyone forgets about, which is the CJCSM 6500, or 6510.101 Bravo. This is actually how the military does cyber incident handling. Why is that really important? Well, the military, for a couple of reasons. One, military always tries to make it as easy and as simple as humanly possible for someone to read. right? So it's easy to digest for the most part. I mean, it is military manuals, but you know, you can still read it. You can still find out what's going on. It also lays out a lot of the incident response. So if you have no idea, if you're coming from the intelligence side of the house or like a sysadmin kind of house, you don't know how a SOC actually runs, read the CJCSM 6510. I've been into a lot of SOCs. I've talked to a lot of folks. And the honest to God's truth is they all do it the exact same way. It's like, they'll start off by saying, well, we do it this way here. And you're like, that's the same way everyone else is doing it. So this will actually get you a good solid standard, honestly. If you're breaking in,
Excuse me. I just want to share. I work on that, and we host that site. So we're moving our web host. So by April or June, that won't be valid anymore.
That's okay. Honestly, if you don't just Google CJCSM 6510, you'll come. Honestly, that's what I did. I'm lazy as soon as possible. Listen, being a CTA takes one overarching capability which you may or may not actually have, and you should really ask yourself this question: are you curious? And honestly, are you tenacious? This job is not easy. It sucks. It's a lot of brute force. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, I can automate that." No. Trust me. The more you automate, the further you are actually sometimes from the truth of what the hell actually happens. If you're only relying on rules that snort fire, my best discoveries have always come from actually just looking into a big giant 1 gig file of PCAP and just scrolling and finding out connections and communications. I found more stuff that way than with any name of vendor. All right. Cyber threat. This is one of the guys who kind of taught me. Cyber threat analyst is the art of taking one metal needle and finding a match in a haystack full of needles inside of a giant warehouse full of haystacks full of very similar looking metal needles, and then finding out that you're actually on a block with giant warehouses that also have giant haystacks full of metal needles. That automation might get you to each haystack faster. It might get you to the point where you can actually just kind of dive into that haystack faster, but it's no replacement for the God's honest brute force annoyance that you're actually going to end up having to do as a cyber threat analyst. Get that through your noodle, otherwise you're going to be really disappointed and really wishing you would have worked somewhere else. If you want to try and break in, if you have that about you, honestly, one of my suggestions is serve your country. And that seems kind of vague, but the reality is we're close to DC, all right? That's why I'm actually saying that, all right? There's a lot of DC organizations that are actually serving this great nation of ours, if you will. You could probably find a job there. In fact, if you looked at LinkedIn, you start typing cyber threat analyst, you're going to find a butt ton of job openings out there. A butt ton. And guess who all they're supporting? U.S., right? For the most part. Some of them are banks, some of them are that, and you can always try and break in that way. You can always go enlisted. I strongly advise you go enlisted. Dear sweet baby Jesus, go enlisted. If you actually want to be technical in any way, shape, or form. Usually officers try to do that, and they realize by the time they're 03s, they can never be technical ever again. There's a lot of internships. A lot of big companies are actually in this DMV area. If you're in this DMV area, you're very blessed. We have 3 BSides and 1 SchmoogCom that are in this area within easy driving distance. This is Mecca for cyber threat analysis, in my humble opinion. It's not out there in Washington. It's not out there in San Francisco. It's not in Texas. It's actually in this area. Because we have so many people doing this job. We have so many opportunities. We have NoVa hackers. We have all these areas to actually communicate and talk back and forth and actually pick up the dang phone and call somebody. There's been a couple guys who I've never met outside of email who came in and they're like, oh yeah, Sweater's Tony. Hey man, nice to finally put a face to you. Because we've only talked via email, back and forth sharing information. It's kind of crazy. I strongly advise you, if you're not from this area and you really want to break into this job, you need to relocate. You might have to do that. You honestly might have to do that. Because there's just so many options out here. And the reason why I'm up here today and talking to you is because I was at DC, the DC BSides in 2016, and I watched this. I was not in the front row, but I was pretty close. And there were less people for that brief than for this one. Actually, there were probably more over there, because that guy is really smart and He talks really well. I don't talk so good. You can watch his YouTube video right here. Join the InfoSec community. Come out here, brief. Come out here and volunteer for BSides. Talk to people. Join one of the hacking groups. There's all kinds of ways to actually break into and start talking to folks around. And again, CTAs, man, we're all about sharing. We really are. Because we're all trying to figure it out in the end. All right, and it's 9:48. So, questions? Good.
Can you talk about like your life at work? Like, how's your schedule? Like,
so what's really great is when you're in a CTA, 9 times out of 10 it's a 9 to 5 gig. Generally, it's not you're not on a watch. Generally,
you were never on call.
Maybe is what I'll say. That answers your question. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. It all depends on which person you're actually supporting.
Just to throw it out there, you talked about the CSA Plus. I did a beta on that test.
Nice.
It's definitely aimed at SOC analysts more so than threat intel analysts.
Well, there went those hopes. That's okay. One of the best books I've read recently is actually a comic book written by Rob Lee.
Oh, yeah.
I highly advise you read it. It's awesome. It's called Cyberintelligence and Me, and it's actually a book for kids and for cyber threat analysts. And what's great is I pass it around in work as much as I really possibly could. Management kind of gets angry when they read that and they recognize themselves as the person that's being made fun of. Be careful. But honestly, my wife, for instance, didn't know anything. I was like, "This is great," and I'm a kid, and it's a comic book. This is awesome. And she actually sat there and read it. And she's like, "This is what you do, and this is what." Now all your complaints make sense. This is awesome. So I highly advise you. It's like $10. I hope that I don't know him personally, but maybe he'll give you big ups for promoting it. But honestly, that's a really great book if you want to read it.
What's the name again?
Cyber Threat Intelligence and Me, I think is what it's
Just
called.
Threat Intelligence and Me.
Thank you. I
A
saw
book
it
for children and analysts.
Yes.
It's fantastic.
What, in your experience, what job functions and roles have you found very good for helping develop a budding cyber threat analyst, somebody that wants to move into that role and be successful? Are there any other skill sets that you found especially valuable in the threat analysts you've worked with?
So I think it kind of comes from 3 or 4 different angles, 3 different pipes that usually feed this. One is the sysadmin type, who you have to sometimes prove that they messed up their config file, and that's cool. That's okay. You have a strong understanding of networks. You need to know networks, honestly. You need to know them like the back of your hand. You need to know how protocols work. So you can actually take on network guys. Honestly, you can. You can take on guys who just did policy. Because listen, a lot of the policy stuff, those are the guys who actually can read this at publications and tell you exactly how to change that. You can get people who only have worked in Linux, bring them into this environment and talk about how Windows. They'll laugh a lot about like, hey, you can do this. This is crazy. PowerShell? I'm back at home, man. This is awesome. Those feed in correctly. The God's truth is, I've met guys who've had, and women especially. Actually, I found that women actually make better analysts than anybody else, honestly. But it all depends on your curiosity and your tenacity to Google and do research. And that's something I know that's a punt of an answer, man. I'm sorry, but that's the honest to God's truth. Is you can take somebody who has no experience. And I've seen guys who had no experience, literally a kid. He just went through my class and everything like that, and he was a second day. I was like, hey man, can you check out this rule alert for me? And she found like APT threat actors in this like huge organization that no one even when he produced his work, he had people saying that can't be possible, and he's like, no, seriously, look at my work. And it's like, oh my God! So that's what I'm saying about this, is because a lot of these things are still being figured out. As long as you understand the policies or the theory behind a lot of things, as long as you connect the dots, and I'm hoping this kind of helps, or at least helps you get started on that. And as long as you're really curious about things, you can go really, really, really far. You really can.
You said you're enlisted? Was your enlisted?
I can't say that, because this had to all go through pre-pub. so I can talk about it afterwards, but not in the public space. Anybody else? All right, cool. Well, you can find me on at CubeWombat if you need to contact me. You can also read my my crazy shenanigans on CubeWombat.com. Please forgive me for not posting all that much. And that's me. Thanks for coming out.
Will you share the PowerPoint?
Yes, I think so. And I'll actually probably show that in the slide share probably shortly.
On the website, right?
It'll either be on the website or I'll actually talk about it on Twitter, and I'll probably post it up on Slide Share. Plus, we are recording, I think, still, so you should be able to catch this whole thing. But yes, I will share these slides.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks for coming to BSides.